So, welcome everybody. It is really wonderful to have you here. So, we are going to hopefully this will be an interactive space where we get to have a discussion with all of you. But just to kind of get us started, I'm just going to bring up some slides. Okay, can everybody see that?
See the screen. There we are. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So we have, through sort of discussions, we've kind of actually given our workshop a bit of a new title. And we have called it is about a bit of a revolution, a solution focused revolution in schools, but we've also called it Green Buds and Spreading Like Ants. So those green buds are the tiny, tiny, tiny bits of solution focused practice that are happening in schools in our local areas. And those green buds are the tiny bits of hope and possibility around solution focus in the cracks of the education system. And the ants are us. So, what we wanted to share with you today is about a solution focused hub that we have started in the southwest of England, predominantly in Bath and Bristol and Wiltshire. So, how this happened was there was a growing number of solution focused practitioners in our area. And each of these solution focused practitioners have been trained by solution focused trainers. And solution focused trainers was founded by the wonderful John Wheeler and Greg Vinnicum. And what has happened is, as each of these solution focused practitioners have gone out into the community, they are spreading the solution focused approach in our schools. So in our local area, there is 12 schools that are using the solution focused approach in some capacity. So our best hope today is to share our story with you. And in sharing our story and sharing some examples of our how, so how we have done this, we are hoping that there is something that you can take from it that might inspire you to invite solution focused into your communities and in particular into your schools. So we're just going to do a very, very, very quick round of introductions. We've got not everybody from our hub is here today because a lot of them are working in schools. So we'll just do a quick introduction of the hub members that are here. And we've also got Gaia Reid, who was with us, who was about to join our hub. So my name is Tara Gretton, and I am a solution-focused practitioner, trainer, and social worker, and based in Bath in the southwest of England. My absolute passion, which has been my passion for many years now, is bringing the solution-focused approach not only into a therapeutic setting in schools, but into our everyday interactions. And that's also something that we want to share with you today, the difference a solution-focused approach can make, not only therapeutically to children, to young people, to families, but in the way that we interact with each other all day, every day. So that's me. I'm just going to pass you over now to Susie, who will introduce herself. You take yourself off mute, Susie.
Thank you for that. I'm Susie Ingram and also live in Bath. And I was trained by Tara to become a solution focused practitioner. And I am practicing the solution focused approach at Beech and Cliff School and have been for many years. And was right at the beginning of the story when we introduced the solution focused approach to the school. So I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit of that with you later on.
Great, thanks, Susie. And Al, you have with us as well.
Yeah, hi there, everyone. Really lovely to meet you all. I'm Al. I am admitting people from the waiting room as we talk. Also trained by Tara a number of years ago, and really passionate about bringing the solution-focused approach to education. I work at the IKB Academy in Bristol, which we'll hear from a little bit later. And yes, sort of passionate changing and supporting young people, bringing solution focus to young people, really, and spreading the word.
Great, thanks, Al. And Callie as well is with us.
Yeah, hi, my name's Callie. I was also trained by Tara. I'm actually a career teacher originally. I taught for over 30 years as an English teacher, but adopted the solution-focused approach when I was teaching at Beech and Cliff. I have since moved to work at a different school where I have introduced, I suppose, solution-focused practice in tiny ways, but I also work as a grief therapist for Cruise, the bereavement charity. So I use solution-focused practice with Cruise as well.
Great, thanks, Callie. And Gaia?
I'm going to feel like a broken record now, so I was also trained by Tara. But yes, hi everybody, my name's Gaia, my pronouns are they, them, she, her. My day-to-day job is I'm kind of an LGBT awareness trainer, trans awareness trainer, but I work in an organisation called Diversity Trust and do sort of LGBT youth work through that. But I kind of guess my background in SF was I actually went to Beech and Cliff School. I was part of the part of that group that sort of did it back in the day in terms of getting solution focus into the school and just training up under with the rest of the team and was quite involved with solution focus a while back in sort of youth empowerment, that kind of thing. But it's really good to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody. So, slides moving. So, what are our best hopes for and from our workshop with you all today? And what we wanted to share was, well, to give you an understanding of the impact of training key staff in schools as catalysts for change. We want to explore how solution-focused practice spreads through interaction and community, how we can identify ways to engage senior leaders and families, and to reflect on solution-focused assumption as community strengthening tools. So this, as I said, is a little bit about how we have done it and what you can take from it, but also we really want to hear from you as well. What are you doing in your communities that's working already? So this is about the power of collective change, and by really inviting communities to support change in school settings. So we're just going to give a very quick sort of overview around how the journeys, particularly some people will know about the story of Beech and Cliff School. So there are key elements that supported that school to become a solution-focused school. And there are key elements from what we did at Beecham that have taken place in other schools in our community. So involving support staff, starting with key staff. I read recently that Insu Kinberg said that it often starts with the school counsellor. So support staff were the first, or can be the first, to receive solution-focused training, and that they are wonderfully positioned to support students and to influence others. So what we found in schools that by starting with key support staff and pastoral staff, and Susie will talk about this herself because she was that person, that they are able to act as early adopters and culture carriers within the school. So something that we found across all of the schools that we are working with and in is that working with the senior leaders, that having their buy-in is essential. and that by having them really being committed to the solution-focused approach, that creates a space for whole school initiatives. And that is what we are seeing in our community. And that they can be role models for the language and support the training rollouts. So a lot of what we've done has happened really organically. And something that we have found to be really powerful and impactful is the solution-focused approach being, well, inviting parents and carers to receive training in the solution-focused approach, and for us to communicate with them about the solution-focused approach that we're using in the school. Susie and I, for one of the schools that we work in, we do a newsletter every week, and we share some solution-focused thinking with parents and carers through the newsletter. And only last week, here in the UK at the moment, it's sort of, kind of ramping up towards exam period. And often students, young people, will talk to us around the pressure that they feel. And they'll talk about the way that their parents have been communicating with them. And some of the students we were sort of talking to them about what would they hope that their parents could do differently, because often their parents are kind of, have you done your revision yet? Have you got everything done? And with really good intentions, but this adding to the pressure. So through with permission from the students being able to kind of find out from them, what would you like your parents to do differently, and then us being able to share that in the newsletter with the parents. So inviting parents to think about how they can use the solution-focused approach in those tiny, tiny, tiny interactions at home. So building that bridge between home and school language. And that's something that we have noticed that has had a really useful impact, and that parents have fed back to us that this has been really powerful. So we were kind of thinking about, an analogy or a metaphor that kind of really best describes what we're doing. And we kind of thought that actually it's a bit like the ant effect, and that we're out there spreading the word about the solution-focused approach, and that we are working creatively, and very much it's bespoke to that school, but working with the school communities to find out how we can best support them and what their best hopes are around how they would like to make use of the solution-focused approach in their schools. But something across all of the schools that we work with is that we've noticed that's really powerful is using SF in everyday interactions. That those conversations happen everywhere. That they happen in the corridor, that they happen in the offices. And that this has had such a powerful impact on the culture, the climate of schools, that what we're noticing is that it is, education is challenging. Schools are much more focused on deficit and what's not working. But by gently bringing the solution-focused approach into those everyday interactions, then communication in the corridors, in the classrooms, is much more around what's working and what's going well. So as we know, solution-focused approach is an interactional perspective, and this is about, meaning is made through interaction. We're not going to change education systems anytime soon. But by gently inviting solution-focused language into schools, then we're shifting how people relate to each other. And what we notice is that stories of what's working and possibility spread across the staff and, really importantly, amongst the students. So something that we would like to do is to invite you into breakout rooms. You know, something that we're talking about is those tiny buds, you know, in amongst the cracks, these tiny, tiny, tiny hopes of possibility, buds of possibility and of hope. So something that we'd like to invite you to do in the breakout rooms is to share a moment when a green bud of possibility appeared, whether that's in a school context or in a personal context or in another context, but just to invite you to think about those tiny, tiny, tiny buds of possibility. What was happening? What helped it grow? So, just going to invite you into breakout rooms to have this conversation for maybe about 7 minutes. Oh, welcome back, everybody.
Hi.
Hello. Sorry, I didn't put a timer on, so I'm not sure how long you were in there for, so apologies if that felt longer or shorter than you were expecting. So it would be lovely, time is whizzing by very fast, but it would be really lovely if people would be up for sharing a little bit from their conversations in the breakout room. It'd be really wonderful to hear from a few of you before we move on.
Susan, I am unmuted. Susan's example was lovely. Would you share it?
Okay. Shared it in 30 seconds, I think, so I will try. Yeah, it's a lovely example that I could reuse recently. It was a basic SF training, and also with the staff working with people with disabilities and different diagnoses, and some of they said, I cannot use this really because the people I work with doesn't have a language, a spoken language, and it's so much about dialogue. So I just said, I don't know. You are the expert in your field, and you already do amazing things with the people you work. So what do you think? How could maybe solution focus add something to it? I don't know. And then one of the ladies in the basic training, came back and said, I did it. And we were so curious, what did you do? Well, I started to really, really focus on one of the persons I work with, and we went to a marketplace. And in that marketplace, I really concentrated on watching her, what was important to her. It ended up with us buying a necklace. And, that communication and what happened in that very moment, she said that was about solution focus, about co-construction, something. And from that example, I have used it in many settings, and last week in a basic training, and people begin to say, wow, this is some, it's just not just the techniques, it's the approach and how I am together with someone, how I behave. So I try to make it short now.
No, that's a beautiful example, Susan. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think I love that you are the expert. Yeah, and I think that's something that we've noticed in the training that we've been doing in schools as well, is that inviting the teaching staff to just build on what they do well. What can you take from the solution-focused approach that's useful for you?
Yeah.
So, and I think that has made such a difference that it is about, whether it's something just really, really tiny, what small thing can you take from it that is going to work for you in your setting and with the students and staff that you're working with. Thank you, Susan. Any other examples? Any other sparkling moments from your conversations in the breakout rooms?
We had quite a few. Bianca had a really interesting, I don't know, she's not on video now too, but both Indu and Bianca had interesting, but Bianca's one with the children when you were teaching, when you were doing the coaching. It'd be really interesting if you could share that if you had a second.
Sure. Thank you very much. What I'm doing is that I'm working with teenagers and their parents. My daughter is a teenager, so it's easier to teach her something and having her friends nearby. And as she's not an adult yet, it's easier to invite parents to, not asking for permission to work with kids. So simply having the parents and the kids in one room during a class. Usually the in the first hours of the training are the adults who are asking questions and talking and positioning themselves and their life experience. Yet, while the kids learned that in an informal class, like in a training, the experience is completely from what they are experiencing in school, like academic learning. They start to bring their wings and start asking questions. And always at the end of the training, it is led by the kids who are asking fearless, who are simply driving the training, come with the energy and enthusiasm. And I had parents who said that I don't recognize my kid. He's completely different at home. It is completely different what happened at school till now. Just because the kids had the space to contribute, and everything started with what they have, what they know, where they want to arrive. And it's such an enlightening experience. I saw parents gaining trust that their kids are ready for life, which is completely different from being home with the marks they receive in school and say, oh my kid is not good enough at something. So I really encourage everyone to have this type of experience. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, what a beautiful example, Bianca. And yes, that's something that I too feel, well, so many of us feel passionately about. That, I mean, I have learned so much from young people. I mean, they have just taught me so much. I think my children should be really grateful that I work with young people, because it's definitely made a difference to the way that I interact with my children. And that when they're invited into that space to be experts and to be seen, to have that autonomy, to be given choice, to be, how often do we seek young people's permission? Can I ask you a question? Is it okay? Is what I'm doing working? Is there anything that I could do differently that would be more useful? That choice, that permission, that autonomy, and that sense of control, and then they get their wings and they fly. Thank you, Bianca. So we are now going to move on to sharing some stories from our ant trail. So some stories from our community and from, I think what's really, really key around what's happened is that every practitioner is working in a very unique way. And they are building on their strengths, their capabilities, and I think that's what's been really powerful and been really wonderful to observe as people go out from the solution-focused training and just build on their own strengths and resources, capabilities, take their unique interests into the school communities, and then work with the schools in a very bespoke way. So we're just going to share some stories with you from the Hub's experience. So, and from that, again, we would love to interact more with you as a group. So, Al, shall I hand over to you?
Yes, I'm just going to share 2 videos. They're quite short. Please just give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound, and I'll send this.
Al's really important to our school. She comes in each week, which is always a joyous day for all of us. Students and myself look forward to that day. She works with a small number of our students who need some extra support. I would say that teenagers as a whole have lots of recycling going on in their kind of thought processes, and find making decisions quite difficult. Al works with our most vulnerable students who perhaps haven't had the support that they've needed earlier in their school career and in their development. And she is someone who doesn't make those decisions for those children. She works through what is an issue for that child and look at all of those different options, and through that co-adventuring together, then those students are able to make their own decisions about how they would like their situation to change. I think that's really important for our really vulnerable students, and I wish that we had the capacity and the resources to make sure that all children were able to have some kind of solution-focused work. Actually, Alan and myself at the moment are looking at putting together some sessions, group sessions for our Year 10s, where all children will get some access to a solution-focused input where they can look at taking control and making some of those decisions themselves. We really value Al's work and the solution-focused process.
Got one,
Hi
yeah.
there, I'm Zoe Geldard from Create and Balance. I'm a solution-focused practitioner, and I was an art teacher for 20 years in secondary schools. I'm now combining the two to offer creative solution-focused therapy. I'm currently working with adults and children one-to-one, as well as in local schools, supporting their SEN departments and vulnerable students. I find that even if a young person isn't creative, this method of solution-focused therapy is there to help them explore their best hopes or find strengths through an artistic process. Any creative technique will enable them to get on with doing and making whilst having a solution-focused conversation. The young people I work with will often create pieces of work to echo, remind themselves of what is going well and how well they're progressing, proving that small changes can lead to a big change eventually. I've got a few examples here. We did a Keith Haring strengths piece, so looking at their strengths. I've done quite a bit of journaling, including things like scaling questions, opening up the little journal, they create their own journal, finding strengths, this is quite a nice one there, and another one, scaling questions. And then this one, which is one of my favourites, is taking a pebble for a walk. So simply pushing a pebble around a page, letting it take its own little course. Really, really relaxing, really lovely. The students can then, here's one I did earlier, paint this, and then they can add in, I don't know, little words, little bits of aspiration or progress that they're making.
Wonderful. So Zoe couldn't join us today because she's busy working in school. It's really wonderful to see what she's doing. So it'd be lovely to hear from maybe Gaia. Would you like to go next? Would that be right?
Yeah, no worries. So I guess I've used solution focus. I'm sort of thinking from my own mindset perspective, but I sort of do LGBT youth work, so supporting LGBT young people. And I kind of reflected on maybe how the solution focus assumptions fit into that, and supporting marginalized young people specifically. So the assumption that I was looking at in terms of strengths, so that basically clients come to us with strengths, both personal strengths and community strengths. And it's a kind of unique option to kind of think about this in terms of marginalized young people. So obviously marginalized young people experience marginalization, experience discrimination, for example. And this can quite understandably be really disempowering. You're seeing societal things happen, you're experiencing a lot of challenges in your day-to-day life that can be really disempowering. And actually a unique moment is to kind of focus on the strength of, change this paradigm to focus on the strength of how you're getting through that marginalization, essentially. Yes, it comes from a place of necessity, but actually you've got a lot of strength. A lot of marginalized young people have got strength and resilience, determination, like community contact that they just take for granted. And it's quite empowering to be able to point out that strength to them so that they can kind of just reflect on that and give themselves a bit of grace for what they're putting up with, essentially. So yeah, I guess it's just this, and that positive, that more empowering mindset of looking at being marginalized can be quite an empowering thing and push you from day to day, I guess. And I try and use it in my own mindset and in my day to day as well. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gaia, for sharing that. Yeah. Susie or Callie, would you like to share your story?
Shall I go next? I don't mind. Shall I go next?
Yeah, go for it.
So I moved from Beaton Cliff, where solution focus was properly embedded, I would say, to work in another school, which on the surface was very similar, expecting that I would be able to introduce a solution-focused approach in my interactions with students and spread that around. And it became pretty clear that there was no resource for that and no real desire for it, although the senior management team were not opposed to solution-focused practice. So I sort of scaled back what I was doing and ended up with sort of 5-minute solution-focused conversations as part of my day-to-day role, managing behaviour and encouraging anxious students to get into lessons. So I've sort of thought about 4 examples really of those little buds that actually started to take root. And the first was a student who was regularly removed from lessons into isolation for being disruptive. And my role was to go and collect him and accompany him to isolation. And in what he called the walk of shame, we had a 5-minute conversation where I was able to use instances to sort of get him to refocus and think about what had worked in the lesson rather than focusing on what hadn't worked. And gradually over the course of several weeks, he got to a stage where he felt able to talk to his teacher about what was happening in the lesson, and she was then able to sort of focus on what was working rather than what wasn't working. And gradually, very slowly, things started to change. So that was really positive in those interactions. And I had those interactions with students every day, several times a day. And I think that works really well. And with other students, the anxious ones who regularly turned up at student reception, not feeling able to go into lessons, engaging them in conversations where they were thinking about their best hopes and what they wanted to happen, and getting their friends involved in those solution-focused conversations meant that they were able to use their resilience a little bit, and sort of I helped them start the car, if you like, and they were then able to sort of steer it and become a little bit more able to cope. And then with teachers, I had 5 minutes really conversations in the staff room with one teacher, Holly, over the course of the year. She felt really stuck in her situation because she was a skilled practitioner, but she was given, as a result, quite a lot of tricky classes. And she was good with those, but she was teaching maths. She wasn't a maths specialist, and results were really important. The faculty were focused on results, and Holly was discouraged from involving herself in the pastoral care of the students, which is the part of the job that she really enjoyed and she felt she was good at. So in our informal solution focused conversations in the staff room, I was able to help her focus, I think, on a detailed look at what her best hopes were, what she really wanted, to gain more clarity, to be more confident in her efficacy and her skill as a teacher. And at the end of the year, she decided she was going to apply for a job in a nearby special school, where she was working with children who were not able to engage in mainstream education and able to use her skills and take the solution focused approach there. So win-win.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kelly. And I think that's just such a wonderful example of where in a school where you might not have that senior leadership buy-in, but you've got a solution focused trained person in the school who can find ways that can sort of quietly, relentlessly, just invite those tiny solution focused conversations across the schools and those everyday interactions, and the power of solution focused in those tiny moments. Even
and I think also, Tara, the fact that it really built the students' resilience and ability to make decisions for themselves in what essentially was an environment where decisions were being made for them and they weren't really buying into those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And Al, as you just sort of said, that every conversation can make a difference. Yeah. The way that we interact with people, the way that we intentionally interact with people, can change how people cope and manage with the world that we live in. Susie, it would be lovely to hear from you, and then we'll move back to some breakout rooms. Oh, you're on mute. Susie loves tech.
I hate tech. Sorry, guys. Right. But what I do love is the solution-focused approach. So when I first was working at Beeching Cliff School, I was the pastoral manager for the sixth form. And there were about 416 to 18-year-olds under the pastoral umbrella. And I was trained by Tara in the solution-focused approach, but I was still trying to get senior management buy-in to widely train all the staff. But what I noticed really helped in terms of small buds was parental meetings with students and other teachers, where we might be managing some conflict, we might be managing some behavioural problems, academic problems, attendance problems. And I was using as a model best hopes in the meeting and inviting parents to notice what had gone well with their son or daughter rather than the absence of the problem. Sorry, looking for the absence of the problem rather than the problem. And those meetings were so different that the whole atmosphere around that, the feeling that the student felt listened to, heard, empowered, and we came up with what we could build on in that meeting together so that things could sort of progress in a good way. And what I noticed was that the staff members who were in those meetings, because I was just representing the pastoral side, really wanted to know how we just done that. What were we just doing in there? Because that was really good. I really liked the approach. And so I encouraged them to talk to the senior leadership team about whether they could have some solution-focused training from Tara. And slowly but surely, the training did happen. And the head teacher was part of that training. So from the very get-go, everybody was invited to the training and they loved it. And most teachers don't like training, but I have never heard one person in our school setting say anything but, now that's worth going to. So it was starting modeling it in the beginning, tiny bits, and then it grew. I hope that helps as a bud story.
Thank you, Susie. That's really wonderful. Yeah, and that just reminded me that how the training has evolved for teaching staff is very experiential.
Yeah.
So it's about them having an opportunity to experience solution focus. Some of our opening questions for the training is, what are you pleased to notice about yourself today?
Yeah.
How have you managed so far this term? So from the get-go it's not only an opportunity to invite them to think about how they will interact with the students and children and young people, but also to invite them to think about what difference a solution-focused approach might make to them. And when they come back for follow-up sessions and we talk about what they've been pleased to notice, what's been better, any examples of them using solution-focused approach, they often share that they went home and tried it with their family. Or it changed the way they interacted with themselves in relation to their self-talk, that they had invited themselves at the end of a really challenging school day, that they invited themselves, rather than to go through that long list of the things that they hadn't got done or they didn't do well, that they were inviting themselves to take that paradigm shift and to invite themselves to think about, actually, what have I managed to do today?
Yeah.
And that is what has made such a difference with the staff training, is that it's about them. It's about everybody. It's about that interconnectedness. It's about community. It's about taking care of each other. So we've only got 5 minutes. The time whizzes past. So in that very, very last few minutes, I just want to invite you to, if anybody's got any questions or wants to, please do stay behind afterwards. But I know the session's starting at 1 o'clock that you're going to want to whiz off to, but you can contact us if you would like to. So we'll just come back to that in a second. But ants and action, quiet, relentless change, gentle warriors out there doing that work. So practitioners and young people spreading solution focused organically, training, word of mouth, peer support groups, like ants, small consistent actions with big collective impact. One ant doesn't build the hill, but everyone matters. And that's what's been key in our community about spreading. I'm all about love, and I see solution focused as being a very compassionate, caring, loving approach. So we haven't really got much time for this, but perhaps this is something that you can reflect on in your own time. So what's your how? What's your how? If you were to choose a word or short phrase that describes your unique how in sharing the solution-focused approach, whether that's in a school context, whether that's in your personal life, whether that's in some other context, what's your how in sharing the solution-focused approach? It's about quietly noticing, playful invitation, structured hope, fierce kindness, whatever it is. What's your unique how? And I would just invite you to jot down or draw a symbol or tiny image that represents that. So taking a moment to think about your unique how in sharing the solution-focused approach. And in taking this moment to think about that, what that is, what can you take from our session today? What are you pleased to notice about yourself? Or is it just amplified in terms of what you're doing well and you're just going to do more of? So, 2 minutes, but just to say a huge thank you for coming to, yes, I love that, Susan. Slow down and listen. Yeah. Pace and space. But thank you all for coming. Yeah, do reach out to us if you've got any questions, and take care and enjoy the rest of the conference.